Nuevamente una bienvenida desde Huipalas por el... Les habla Janet Ramos. Esta noche tenemos un invitado especial que seguramente ya lo han debido escuchar por allá en Bolivia y bueno, en toda la red de Huipalas por el mundo. Tenemos como invitado a Walter, que ha tenido el coraje, ¿no?, de interpelar a Luis Almagro en Estados Unidos, por allá. Esta entrevista va a ser en inglés, nos disculpamos, pero vamos a preparar la subtitulación para próximamente. Good night, everyone. Here I welcome to you. We are again tonight with an interview. We're going to interview Walter, who was very courageously talk to the truth to Almagro and denounce all the crimes and the collaboration he did with the dictatorship Janine Áñez. So this interview will be in English, and for later we are going to translate into Spanish. So welcome to everyone. And we are going to start. Now I give the floor to Amancay.
Thank you, Janet, and good evening, everybody. I'll be giving a short context in the tonight. In recent days, the 9th Summit of the Americas, organized by Joe Biden, has been taking place in the United States. Interestingly, Spain has been invited. However, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela have been excluded. Biden announced to meet with the self-proclaimed Juan Guaidó, the so-called Venezuelan president, to whom he recognizes a U.S. puppet. Biden probably also believes that Spain belongs to the American continent. Perhaps someone will have to teach him a little geography. What a shambles. But we also heard Iván Duque praising highly to Luis Almagro on his defense for democracy. Really? Duque, the man responsible of so many massacres in Colombia, so much impunity, talking about democracy. This is too much cynicism. At the same time, the People's Summit for Democracy have been organized in the USA with the assistance of social movements, youth activists, and the left of the American continent. They called for the unity and integration of all the peoples of America and told imperialism. Now it's the people's time, not of the empires. The empire is pleased to apply decades of criminal blockade to Cuba and other countries. And there we have the OAS and other organizations financed by the empire, which, as Comrade Walter rightly said, are puppets of young imperialism, supporting coup d'etats as the fascist coup of November 2019 in Bolivia. But the Latin American and Caribbean peoples have already woken up and are now more united than ever. They refuse to be the backyard of the empire, and therefore they demand respect for their sovereignty and free self-determination. Enough of trying to take over the world. Our peoples deserve to live in peace and harmony, not in continuous wars and destruction. And here I'll go with the first question to Walter, and it is, why do you feel so strongly about Luis Almagro's role as OAS General Secretary? Walter.
Well, I think that his role has been just so disgusting for many reasons. But to focus on his role in Bolivia, I mean, for myself personally, and for so many other activists in the United States, the process of change in Bolivia, the presidency of Evo Morales was such a huge inspiration. I mean, we're living in a country ruled by people who said that history ended, right? They actually declared the end of history, quote unquote. But the fact that the process of change in Bolivia began, and all sorts of other revolutionary and progressive governments came to power in Latin America, was a huge source of hope and inspiration. And so, of course, we all remembered how it felt watching from afar the terrible atrocities, the massacres at Sacaba and Sencata, the lies being told by Almagro, the false allegations of fraud in the election, and in addition to being outraged and disgusted by that, also just so inspired by the resistance of the people of Bolivia. I mean, under such tremendously dangerous circumstances, resisting, staying in the streets, demonstrating despite all of these massacres, this repression. That was something that's just such a huge source of inspiration. And so I think that for activists in the United States, our top duty is to oppose the government that claims to speak in our name, and all of their puppets like Luis Almagro. So that's why I felt so strongly about this.
Thank you. Janet?
Thank you, Walter. Yes, we agree. Almagro is a puppet of the United States. Yeah, we have another question about how you think Almagro is guilty of aiding and abetting the United States taking down against what they are doing against progressive governments in Latin America.
Sure. Well, to start with the 2019 coup, I mean, the lie that the election was fraudulent was really what set into motion the whole rest of the process. I mean, that was sort of the basis, the foundation upon which all of these other cynical political maneuvers could take place. And of course, Almagro knew exactly what he was doing when he told those lies. He knew exactly what the consequences would be, and clearly, this was all planned out by the State Department, by the CIA, by the U.S. government, at that point, the Trump administration. And I think that that's totally consistent with the role that Almagro has played in other parts of the Americas. I mean, his support, for instance, of the sanctions and economic warfare being waged against Venezuela and against Cuba. I mean, the criminal decades-long blockade against Cuba, I think, is a complete outrage. It's a violation of the rights of the people to simply to live, to get the basics that they need to live a dignified life, and of course a violation of their right to independence and sovereignty. That's something that he's been completely committed to throughout his tenure as OAS General Secretary, and he'll continue to do that as long as he's in office. I mean, really, the entire institution, the Organization of American States, should be abolished, because it's nothing more than an extension of the U.S. government, an extension of the State Department, just a way to manage and control the governments of Latin America and the Caribbean, and make sure that they follow the dictates of Washington and Wall Street. And so there's no reason whatsoever that the OAS should even exist.
Thank you, Walter. In all its history, the OAS has been there to topple democratic governments in Latin America. And as you said, should Almagro resign, and should he be prosecuted for his regime change activities against Latin American countries?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that what he's done is at the level of international crimes. I mean, of the worst nature. Almagro is completely responsible, just as responsible as the soldiers who pulled the trigger at Sacaba and Sencata. Almagro is just as responsible. He's the person who set in motion the whole chain of events, who created the conditions for that to happen. Who created the conditions for, by some estimates, 40,000 people in Venezuela to die because of the economic warfare, denying essential goods to that country. Yeah, I mean, these are crimes. These are absolutely crimes. Here in the United States, I mean, you can be sent to prison for decades just for stealing something small from a store. But if you create the conditions in which massacres and genocides and violations of sovereignty take place, I think the only just outcome would be for him to be put on trial by the people of Bolivia and the people of all the other countries that he's violated. I think that also goes for so many people inside the United States as well. I mean, Almagro there's no way Almagro acted alone, right? I mean, this was completely done in concert with the U.S. government, with the CIA, with the State Department, with U.S. Corporate media outlets as well. So I think that that all of those people need to be brought to justice, whether they live in Bolivia, whether they've fled to the United States, whether they're still at large, or if they live very, very comfortably in mansions in the United States.
Yes, we know we are all waiting for justice in Bolivia. All the families that were victims, and they are waiting. That's also our work as we Palas por el here, and this is why also we have this interview with you. And yes, I think we agree that the OAS is evidently a threat for our region, for our democracy. So do you think, for example, we can close this institution?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. I mean, I'm very hopeful about some of the moves that have already been taken to strengthen integration outside of the Organization of American States. I mean, of course, there's the ALBA Alliance, UNASUR, CELAC. I mean, I think it's fantastic that there are these other institutions of regional cooperation that have been created that provide an alternative to the Organization for American States. And someday here in the U.S., we're going to have a different system of government too. We'll have a different system of government that respects the sovereignty of the peoples, and maybe hemispheric cooperation can be organized, but it would have to be organized on a completely different basis, the basis of equality. And the OAS is simply not an organization that could ever facilitate equality between the nations of the Americas. It's simply an institution of domination to make sure that the United States government and the corporations based in the United States remain on top. And so it should absolutely go. It should be replaced by genuine institutions of people's solidarity. And I hope that can happen sooner rather than later.
I agree. CELAC is one of those organizations that could represent better the Latin American peoples in our region. Going to the next question. Your views of Almagro and U.S. foreign policy in the U.S. seems to be shared by a minority. Why? Or what social forces should we look towards in the U.S. for solidarity support and opposition to U.S. aggression against us in the global South?
Right. Well, I agree with you. I think it is a minority view. The anti-imperialist, pro-independence, pro-sovereignty view in the United States is a minority view, but I think it is growing. We're subjected to so much propaganda here in the United States. From the time you're a little kid, you're told that the United States is the exceptional country, that this is the country that was just destined to rule the world. And it's a good thing because, here we have freedom and democracy and human rights and so on. So, I mean, you're told that from childhood, and then it's constantly reinforced in the media, in universities, and all sorts of different areas of public life by politicians, the rhetoric from politicians. So there's really a heavy regime of indoctrination that happens in the U.S. But I think that is becoming weaker because the government of the United States and the economic elites who really run the United States are becoming so discredited, especially in the eyes of many, many young people in the U.S. It's common knowledge, for instance, that the U.S. government lied about the invasion of Iraq, right? Obviously, there was no weapons of mass destruction, and that was simply an opportunity for the U.S. to pillage the oil of Iraq. I would say that's actually a majority view. And so I think that it's not that much of a stretch for other people to think, okay, well, lithium is an important resource, for instance, or gas is an important resource, for instance. And so, of course, what the U.S. government is doing in Bolivia isn't about democracy. It's about these resources. There's so much inequality, so much injustice in the United States, so much racism in the United States. I mean, we saw 2 years ago the biggest protest in U.S. history against racist police brutality, the movement for Black Lives. And there have been other people's movements too, for environmental justice, the labor movement. There was the Occupy Wall Street movement, of course. All of these people's struggles, I think, have exposed to a growing number of people that the U.S. government lies, not as an exception, but as the rule. That's their standard operating procedure. to lie in the interests of Wall Street and the big corporations. So when, for instance, we tell people that, right, when we try to convince people of that, again, true minority anti-imperialist view, I think a lot of people are very open to that, or an increasing number of people are very open to that.
Yes, I agree. The tyrant of the
Yeah.
world who goes invading, looting, destroying countries, committing crimes against humanity. But we also have seen police brutality around this so-called summit yesterday when they attacked to an activist, no, in the street. So, well, we have to fight. But I'll give the microphone to Janet.
Yes. Yes, we have a last question, Walter. We were really impressed about the force you had in your voice. Said to when you accuse Almagro about his responsibility on the massacres we had in Sacaba and Sencata, and then you mentioned Sebastián Moro. How you hear about his case and what you can tell us about this?
Yeah, well, of course, the mainstream corporate outlets in the United States did not cover the murder of Sebastián Moro. I found out about it by reading Telesur, which I think is a very important alternative outlet. But I think that the attack on democracy and the attack on journalists, true independent journalists, go hand in hand. They want to commit their crime, and then of course they want to cover up their crime. And I think it's such an unbelievable tragedy what happened to Sebastián Moro. All my heart goes out to his family and loved ones. And I think it's important that the people responsible be brought to justice. Again, the people who personally carried it out, and also the people who created the conditions for that to happen. I absolutely believe that we should struggle for justice for Sebastián Moro, for all the victims of the coup, and especially point out how attacks on journalism are such a big part of what the empire does. I mean, just to give another example, there's WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, right? I mean, maybe the most important journalistic project that I can think of, right? WikiLeaks, that exposed so many of the lies of the empire. He's in prison. He's awaiting extradition. So this is how the United States treats those who speak out and expose what they're really doing. I was. It was an honor to be able to raise the struggle for justice for Sebastián Moro there when I interrupted Luis Almagro, and of course that movement needs to continue.
Thank you, Walter. You give us hope. That's also the work we are doing from Argentina, from Bolivia, from the UK, from France. We reach people like you, and you have the courage to say all this to Almagro. We were just happy to hear that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
We're now.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, so Walter, we're coming now to the end. Thank you so much for the time that you spent today. We have Emiliano, who's joining us from Argentina to speak. His part has been a key role in the campaign for Sebastián Moro's family. Would it be okay we just have one? I think, Emiliano, tú quieres tener un mensaje. Ahora ya entramos a la parte donde tú vas a dar un mensaje y quieres darle un mensaje para Walter sobre esta intervención que él hizo muy acertada y que ahora se ha viralizado a nivel mundial. Emiliano, tienes la palabra.
Gracias, Claudia. Bueno, Walter, sé que estuviste hablando ya con Raquel, la mamá de Sebastián Moro. Cuando nosotros nos levantamos ese día, el 8, habíamos hecho una actividad en el Senado de la Nación Argentina en homenaje al periodista. El 7 de junio en la Argentina es el Día del Periodista. Ahí hicimos un homenaje a Sebastián y fue una actividad muy fuerte, muy impactante por el acompañamiento de todas las organizaciones, de la Secretaría de Derechos Humanos de la Argentina. Y al otro día levantarnos y ver el video en donde nosotros decimos acá en Argentina, escrache, ¿no? Es una palabra que quizás no se conoce en otras partes del mundo, pero es una herramienta que los hijos de los desaparecidos, presos políticos y exiliados de las dictaduras del Operativo Cóndor tenemos para denunciar a los genocidas con los cuales hemos conseguido el juicio y castigo acá en Argentina y seguimos luchando por eso. Cuando vimos tu escrache a Luis Almagro, este nuevo genocida, ¿no? Un genocida de nuevo tiempo, que en un envase progresista viene a tener las mismas prácticas autoritarias y genocidas que tuvieron los genocidas de la década del 70 y el 80. Entonces, cuando vimos ese escrache, nos pusimos muy contentos porque nos dimos cuenta que Sebastián Moro había llegado muy lejos. Había llegado a un joven como vos. Inmediatamente Raquel quiso comunicarse con vos, expresarte el amor que siente la familia por lo que hiciste, la valentía y el coraje con lo que hiciste, por lo que hiciste tú y supongo que todos tus compañeros y compañeras. Y bueno, queremos mandarte un abrazo muy grande. Sabemos que a los genocidas los van a vencer los pueblos. Sabemos que lo imposible solo tarda un poco más y que tarde o temprano la memoria y la verdad y la justicia van a ser una bandera en nuestro continente. Y esperamos no solo que renuncie, como hoy pidió el presidente de nuestro país, a la Secretaría General de la OEA, que sea desplazado, sino que sea encarcelado junto con el resto de los genocidas del golpe de Estado del 2019 en Bolivia, Camacho, Mesa, Áñez, que hoy estamos esperando que se le encarcele, y tantos otros que se ocultan en las sombras, ¿no? Como los que asesinaron a Sebastián Moro, y a tantos compañeras y compañeros, hermanas y hermanos, cuyos nombres tenemos que empezar a dar a conocer como el de Sebastián. Gracias, Walter. Y en nombre de toda la campaña y en todo el nombre de toda la familia, te vamos a sumar a este equipo de la campaña porque sabemos que la lucha continúa. Gracias.
Hayaya, Hayaya.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to try to translate everything or the whole message that Emiliano gave just to you. But what I think what will be is so important to have justice of the language. So we will send you a transcript of what Emiliano has said, so you have it in full. So for the viewers also watching us and yourself, what Emiliano started saying is that he is very pleased to see what you've done for the courageous act that you did have. He knows that Sebastián Moro's mom has already been in contact with you, so you have spoken, and she was very pleased, especially since the day before they had this very big event in Argentina Senate, where they paid tribute to Sebastián Moro, and they were talking about the case and also hoping for justice. So the next day comes along your incredible, outstanding intervention. So it's almost icing of the cake. I remember Emiliano said to me earlier. Emiliano also made reference to something called escrache, which in a term I hadn't heard before actually is a term where he says that it's used, like similar to your intervention. And this escrache, when they saw it, they were just very impressed and they were very pleased that you were able to raise, your voice and condemn what Almagro has done. He's also said that this reminds of the strategies that people that were in the time of the victims also of the Condor project, that also they use these scratches to denounce the genocides that were happening. And just to conclude that what he's also hoping to do, and I think you already know, is that they're going to add you as well to the team of the campaign, because they really want you to welcome. They really want you in. So everyone, I think we're going to make it just a whole speech, a full sort of, we just have to have it everywhere. And we're very grateful for that. So that's the end of the translation. And just to say thank you, Walter. Gracias, Emiliano. Gracias, Amancay. Gracias, Janet. Thanks to everyone. We need to seek justice. I forgot to say, Emiliano also said that he believes that Almagro not only needs to be removed, he needs to be jailed. He needs to pay for the things that he's done. He needs to also pay alongside Camacho. He needs to pay alongside Janine Áñez, whom we're waiting today to hear from, and all of the people that have created all these barbarities, all of this coup, and the dehumanization of indigenous people. Thank you so much, Walter. Thank you, everyone. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much for having me.
Gracias.
Hayaya, Walter. Hayaya, Walter.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias a todos. Tendremos la traducción de la entrevista. Gracias, Walter. Gracias, Hayaya. Terminamos ahora.
Nos vemos, Lu.
Thank you so much.
Sí.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.